Explore the vibrant arts and culture landscape of Michigan, a state with a thriving creative ecosystem that has birthed iconic movements like Motown and the Purple Rose Theater. Home to legendary musicians, writers, and artists, Michigan boasts a rich tapestry of cultural heritage known worldwide. Michigan Creates is a podcast series that will connect listeners with gifted artists and cultural institutions that are nurturing Michigan's vibrant creative landscape. Welcome to Michigan Creates, the podcast that shines a spotlight on the talented individuals making a mark in Michigan's vibrant arts and culture scene. I'm your host, Ara Tapuzian, and today we have an extraordinary guest, the renowned musician Dave Bennett. Known for his magic on the clarinet and his captivating performances that span genres from swing to rock, Dave has enchanted audiences nationwide. Join us as we delve into his musical journey, his creative process, and the stories behind his most memorable performances. Get ready for an inspiring conversation, one of Michigan's own musical treasures, Dave Bennett. It's terrific to talk to you today. Thanks for being on Michigan Creates.
Thanks a lot for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I really have wanted to talk to you for a long time. I have followed your career as a musician. I marvel at your clarinet playing, your piano playing. We're going to talk about all of that, but I mean, you're a full-time musician, and we first met many years ago. I think I told you this offline that we were on the same bill at a Django Fest. And I was brought on to do sort of the traditional world music, and it was a progression of music that led up to really the finale, which was your group playing, and you in particular were playing clarinet. I always joke that it was kind of funny that I played that gig because we were like the dinosaurs, and that's how music first started, and then how it progressed into what it is today in jazz and Django style music and other forms of it. But I knew back then, and this sounds really corny to say, but it really is true, boy, were you going to be a phenomenal talent, because I had not heard anyone play the style that you were playing and still continue to play. I didn't hear that other than recordings or Benny Goodman or whatnot. So this is an extra treat for me today. And so we're going to jump right in, and I want to learn about your history. I want to talk about your path to becoming a musician. So when did you first start playing music?
I was 10,
Yep.
fifth grade band. And so my grandparents bought me my first clarinet at a local pawn shop in Pontiac, Michigan. And around that same time, they bought me a cassette tape of Benny Goodman, just because they thought I'd get a kick out of it, to hear what this instrument could do. And music wasn't really pushed on me. They just thought it'd give me a hobby.
Yeah.
And I don't know how or why, but as soon as I got that horn and I heard Benny, I knew what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know if you could or if you couldn't, but something clicked, and I was really sure of it. So that's how that whole process started.
And that was the style that you wanted to play. That resonated with you as a young child. But that's not what you that's not what you went to college for, though, right?
No, you see, I didn't want to teach music or play in a symphony orchestra. So I thought, if the worst should ever happen and I couldn't play music, if God forbid, if something ever happened, what could I fall back on that would be practical? So my uncle used to be CFO for the Detroit Lions. And
Okay.
My family just said, well, what about accounting or something in business? I said, yeah, okay, let's do that. So I got my bachelor's and master's at Oakland University. And, I was on the road full time during college too, but I never did it. I never did it for a living. So I don't have any work experience. It's helped me with the business end of the music world. I prepare the contracts and do all the budgeting, but I never had to do it.
Well, I think we're all pretty fortunate for that. But like you said, it comes in handy to run the music business. We know it's not just showing up to gigs, playing and going home. You've got musicians to pay, and and yourself, and you're a full-time artist. So I think it does definitely have a purpose. Uh, who was your teachers? I mean, growing up and playing, I mean, we're going to listen to you later play a little bit, but I mean, did you learn by ear or did you have some instruction along the way?
Oh yeah, well, both. So the teacher that I had that started me, Jamie McLeod, I think he was about 27 years old at the time. He only taught fifth grade band 1 year, and it
Okay.
happened to be the year that I was in fifth grade. And he was clarinet player, master clarinet player, and a really big Benny Goodman nut. So I also discovered that I had an ear. I remember after playing for a couple of weeks, I could hear a song in my head and play it.
Hmm.
So I'd come into class and say, "Boy, check this out," and then he'd help me, um, how to do this properly. So every week I'd learn a new song, and then he'd kind of correct me and help me out and give me really good pointers on how to do a lot of things. And he only taught in the district, I think, for 2 years that I knew of him, and then he had to move away to take care of his mother, whose health was failing. But the 2 years that I knew him, just as a teacher and as a player, he was a really big, strong influence on me, both as personally and musically. So he really set a good foundation for me. And then after that, there was a local legend named Emil Sutt, who was in his 80s at the time, and he gave lessons for 60 years at his house. And I took lessons from him for about a year or so. But a large portion of it was just me figuring things out by ear. So there was a long time that I could play things that I didn't really understand what I was doing. And
Okay.
but it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started playing with Tad Weed, who was my piano player at the time. Tad unfortunately passed away 6 years ago, but Tad was a brilliant teacher, and he was able to explain all this stuff that I was playing with the theory. So it wasn't until I was in my 20s that I started learning what it was that I had been doing all along, and now I've taken that knowledge and try to learn more of that proper
Right.
training myself.
So genre wise, has it always been just were you learning jazz? Were you learning classical? I mean, I would imagine with your ability, there might have been some classical element or not so.
No, not really. I did solo and ensemble,
Yeah.
but classical music for me, there's an element to it that for some reason I've never been able to latch onto. Like there's so
Mm.
many good players that can really nail that style, and I've never been one of them. Maybe it's because I haven't been drawn to it as strongly as some people have. Um, but there really wasn't any classical training in me. I think maybe I've done a little bit more of that in the last 5 or 6 years, trying to broaden my spectrum, but
Yeah.
not much. No.
Okay. Well, that's quite okay. I mean, I guess by the type of playing that you're doing and the different genres, maybe there's not a necessity for something like that. Jazz is very similar to world music, different types of world music, which I can identify with. And I wonder, do you feel the same way as I do that part of the love that you have for jazz is the improvisational part of it, to be
Yeah,
able to kind of create? Is that the same for you?
I think so. I mean, it there's something really fulfilling in trying to come up with your own ideas, and that
Yeah.
like for instance, what the way I study things, I'll take just because Benny Goodman or Pete Fountain, their ideas are very pleasing to me, I can still learn something new. So, for instance, the other day I took one of Benny's solos and learned it start to finish, and
Yeah.
then just used that as like a foundation to come up with something of my own. And
Hmm.
then that's when that little spark inside you makes you really get happy. It's like, oh, you can kind of build off these ideas that you really like. And so that's kind of my study tool these days, is
Yeah.
taking other people's solos, learning them, because they may play in a way that I wouldn't think to go, and that takes the mind and it stretches it, and then I can step into musical ideas I wouldn't go in before.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I also find interesting is it's not just jazz that you play. I mean, you're composing music, you're doing rock as well, and maybe 50s rock and other, and you sing as well. I mean, that's a interesting combination, Dave, if you will. There's not too many people that I think could reference Benny Goodman and Jerry Lee Lewis all in the same breath. And you're doing both, and audiences love it. Do you combine both when you're on a gig? Are you playing both styles, or is it
No,
either?
it's all the time. In fact, I've
Yeah,
found that's what adds it. That's what makes it a unique, special thing, is we do all the different styles in one show. And I found a way to make it flow, throwing in the things that I've written, and then throwing in a couple of the rockabilly things. It all seems to work, and I spent probably a good, I don't know, 15 years feeling that out and seeing, okay, how are audiences going to react to this? Or, you know, and fortunately, people that come to see us, that's what really kind of gets them, is the fact that they don't really know what's coming next.
yeah,
So the key for me is now to read the audience and say, okay, well, I don't know if they're going to go for this particular style, but let's take a chance. Or if I'm really feeling the vibe that it's not going to fly with a certain audience, then I won't do it. But it's nice to have all these things in your back pocket too, because not only do I love all these different types of music, but it guarantees that you can just keep working and doing different things. And
yeah, that's true.
that's what keeps life exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. It opens up the type of venues you can't play now. You just need to type in your name on YouTube, and you can see these perfect examples of videos where you were really getting the crowd going, and you're doing different forms, and you bring a certain excitement and energy to the stage. So you've been playing for a long time. How many different groups have you been playing with?
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah. Ooh,
Well, okay. So I'll try to make this as condensed as possible. The first group that I went on the road with
yeah.
was when I was 14, and they were a Dixieland band called the New Reformation Jazz Band. They were based out of Saginaw. So they took me to the West Coast when I was 14, first time. And then, I had various groups of my own that I put together in high
Right.
school during that time. But the New Reformation Band was the main group I was playing with. And then when I was 19, we put together a tribute to Benny Goodman, which had
Mm,
local guys like Paul Keller and Pete Sears and Bill Myron. And then I met up with the Hot Club guys when I was about 20 years old. So I played with them. And then, my thing got to be a little too busy to maintain both. So I kind of faded out from those guys. For no other reason than I kind of wanted to focus on my own thing. But I
right.
love them all. I love them all dearly. So I'd say for the past 15 years or so, it's just been my group. And then maybe in the last 6 or 7 years, it's been purely the quartet. Because there was a long time there I was doing tributes to Benny Goodman primarily, which was a joy. And, there's a lot of work that called for it. But then the quartet, which can do the Benny thing, and also the different styles, the rock stuff, the surf, the country, the pop, whatever, I found that group to be the most diverse. So we could kind of do whatever the occasion called for. So at the moment right now, that's the primary group.
Okay. Well,
But
that's
I still, I'm getting a chance lately to work with a lot of different people in their projects too, which I got to say, as a band leader, I love being called as a side band, because it's like, hey, no pressure. What do you want me to
right.
do? I have no problem with that at all.
Right.
So
Just show up.
yeah, it's great. I got
You're
enough
you're
of it
all
on my own time.
you're also composing too, Dave. So I want to talk about that. I mean, has that always been part of who you are as a musician? Have you always been composing, or did that sort of gradually happen over the years?
That gradually happened. So I wrote my first song when I was 17. It was called Lonesome Highway. It's a Roy Orbison style thing.
Hmm.
And then it took me years before I could write another one. And I tried and nothing came out. And I thought to myself, am I only really good for one song? Maybe I am. I don't know. But it wasn't until 2015 when my friend Shelley Berger and I got together when we wrote what became the album Blood Moon that I did for Mac Avenue. And we put our heads together and we wrote most of that album. So I had his knowledge. He's an amazing arranger and composer.
Hmm.
And so I really studied what he did, his chord voicings, how he composed, and I like analytical stuff. So that gave me more tools for me to work with to compose things on my own. So once we did that, I found it a little bit easier to try this on my own. And then, over COVID, I wrote an entire album, which is mainly a rock surf style album, but it's something that definitely took a long time. I mean, songwriting it was never easy, and it's still not easy.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's tough. It's like pulling teeth. I mean, I have to do it, but I dread it a lot of times because
Well, it's not overnight.
no,
I admire musicians that can compose, because I don't think I can compose myself out of a box. And,
yeah, I get it. I
and
know.
it's certainly not easy. And I would equate it to writing a book, right? It's not something
Yeah,
that happens overnight. And there's a
right.
lot of trial and error, I'm sure, that goes along with that. But I mean, you've done quite a bit. I mean, how many songs have you written at this point, or composed?
Geez, let's see. On my own, um, I don't know, maybe 11 or 12 on my
Okay.
own, just on my own. I've
Right.
co-written quite a few things, but
Right.
it's getting easier. It's just skill set that maybe if you whittle away at it, eventually it'll get easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something it doesn't come easy.
No,
None
definitely.
of this comes easy. What am I talking about? None of this comes easy. I mean,
Well, you make it effortless.
well, I appreciate that, but I mean, like for instance, this instrument is
Yeah.
fighting me every day, so it's none of this is it does thank you for saying that, but it doesn't feel effortless. Let me just put it
Well,
that way.
maybe that's what you need. I mean, maybe that's what certainly keeps you going. So, you touched on a few things, but I want to kind of hone in on a couple of items. So you are technically a recording artist. So you have done work on your own, I believe, and then also for Mac Avenue
Uh-huh.
Records as
Yeah.
well. Um, and that has afforded you some opportunities. Anything memorable out of when you record? I know that I have my own experiences and likes from recording albums and whatnot, but doing the recordings that you've done, what maybe some other opportunities has it afforded for you?
Um, well, definitely when we did the Blood Moon album, uh, what we did was we recorded that in Toronto, and I let my
Mm.
friend Shelley be the producer, and Mac Avenue allowed us that freedom to do that. So I got to meet other musicians that I'd never played with, and engineers that I had never known that had worked with some of my musical heroes. So that for instance, that one opportunity allowed me to kind of stand on my own 2 feet a little bit more and say, okay, it gave me a little more confidence that I could kind of become my own person, because that was a time when these were songs I had a hand in writing.
Yeah.
You wonder if people are going to like them or how this is going to go. And so that being with Mac Avenue, they kind of gave me a little boost of confidence that said, no, you can do this, and so I'm grateful for that experience. And I think I've taken that with me on some of the recent things that I've done.
Some of the memorable places that you've played, you've done Carnegie Hall. I know that.
That was the topper.
That was the topper. Yeah. Talk about that a little bit. How was that
Uh,
experience?
it was, well, walking on air. I mean, it was a 75th anniversary celebration of Benny Goodman's Carnegie Hall concert. So Bucky Pizzarelli, the guitarist, guested on it. And Bucky and I had known each other for quite some time prior to that. So that was wonderful. But we had done that particular show many, many times by that point. But I remember I practiced that show inside and out at home for 3 months just because I wanted to have it in my blood. And I just remember by the time we got there, I was just soaking up every moment, being with the people. A lot of my family came, a large Michigan contingent came to the show, and it was a perfect night. I can't believe it happened.
I think that's fantastic.
It was just greatest celebration you could ever imagine.
That's awesome. So the fun question I'll ask you is because, like I said earlier, I've watched your videos, and I need to know what type of exercises you're doing in order to be able to throw your leg up on a piano and stand up playing. I mean, I hurt my back just standing up out of a chair sometimes. And I mean, the energy you're bringing that we talked about, I mean, you've got to stay in shape doing that stuff.
Well, it's taxing. There's no question about it. I do stay active each day. But I mean, it's not getting easier. So I really try to do it properly. And the problem is, what is proper? So I mean, some of those movements that I was doing when I was 22 are a little more risky. So I have a very good naturopath and chiropractor, and I show them videos of me doing a lot of this stuff. So they've corrected certain things I had been doing wrong. And I mean, honestly, it's now when I'm doing a show, especially when I'm doing the piano and the Jerry Lee Lewis stuff, I got about 30 things going on in my mind at once. For instance, form, how to turn my head, if I leap up and stand on one leg, where to apply the pressure, just because I want to keep doing this as long as I can. I want to be an old man and still be able to do it. Just because it brings me such joy, and it brings other people joy,
That's interesting. Yeah. You're very methodical about it. I was half kidding when I was asking that question. I know it's not something I could do, but that's interesting that you give some additional thought to it. That's very it's almost rehearsed in your head what you're going to be doing when you're doing that type of movement. That's interesting.
It has to be now. It didn't used to be.
Right.
No.
True.
But for instance, I was having there were a couple times where my neck got a little weird, and just by a simple keeping the head forward a little bit, managed to fix a lot of those issues, because I want to keep doing it.
Yeah. Well, we want you to keep doing it as well.
Thanks.
Speaking of doing it, we want to hear you play clarinet.
Okay.
So will you regale us with a few different songs?
Sure. Be happy to.
Great. We may have to I may have to use little clips.
All right.
For those that are listening and that can't actually see you play, I'm sorry for them, but certainly they can watch this on YouTube and see that you are playing, and you're an unbelievable player, Dave. So I mean, I really do respect your abilities, and we're so proud to have you here in Michigan. I want to wish you the best of luck, and I can't wait to watch and follow you for another 20 years because I think that's how long I've known you. And so I appreciate you being on the podcast today.
Thank you very much, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Michigan Creates. We hope you've had fun diving into the creativity of our state. From Motown melodies to artisanal wonders, Michigan never fails to dazzle. But hey, the creativity doesn't stop here. Connect with us online, subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new episodes. Help us spread the word and also share your own artistic stories. So until next time, I'm Ara Tapuzian, and I want you to keep those musical instruments in tune, keep those paintbrushes moving, and keep those cameras rolling. Remember, in Michigan, the only limit is your imagination. Stay creative.